Okay, and we're sticking with AEW. Fightful Select has reported today that AEW is prepared for Toni Storm not to be cleared to wrestle throughout the rest of this calendar year at a minimum. The reason hasn't been disclosed. For those who didn't see it, Storm wrestled at Revolution last Sunday and beat Marina Shafir. After the match, Ronda Rousey appeared. They came to face before security separated them. Storm was scheduled for a rematch with Shafir on Wednesday's Dynamite, a no holds barred match. But the show went on the air. The camera showed Storm laid out in her locker room with blood around her head and Luther in hysterics, calling for help. With all of it's being presented as a mystery attack with all these sort of clues, Easter eggs being set around the place. We've got Mina Shirakawa's barbed wire bat, Chris Statlander's strap, Penelope Ford's mallet, Megan Bain's chair. I think it's Monet's neon light. I've been looking at these things, the kendo stick belonging to Hikaru Shida. So they've set this up as a mystery. But Fightful are pretty clear in their reporting that Toni is not expected to be back. She's not expected to be cleared to wrestle. And, before we get into the discussion, we obviously wish Toni all the very best in her time away, whatever the reason is. There's plenty of speculation online, as you can imagine, when they're openly talking about a minimum 9-month absence, and we're not having reporting of specific injuries. So pregnancy has clearly been put out there by some fans as a possibility here. It may, of course, be something else. We don't know. The reporting isn't clear, but Toni is one of AEW's biggest stars. Never mind just in the women's division. If she's out through the end of the year, surely she was figured into something for All In, probably with Ronda Rousey. With her out of the picture, who's got the ability to step up and fill that spot? Who's at that level in the women's division right now?
Well, you have to look at the next biggest star, and of course that would be Mercedes Moné, who kind of revealed that she would be back after the Winnipeg show, or at least somewhere around there. She's currently, on this run, dropping all of her championships and set to come back, soon enough. And I think this is probably pretty good timing. Obviously, they're very different, and one is not a full-on replacement for the other in any sort of way. But in terms of star power in the women's division, somebody that you could potentially put into main events without necessarily putting the championship on her, she, I think, fulfills that quota. It's very interesting. Again, there's really not much for us to speculate on because we simply don't know. But it's interesting to at least see the timeline of events. She was scheduled and announced for this match against Marina Shafir on Wednesday, and from what we hear, it was changed very late into the game. So
it felt like Bryan Danielson did not know, as John and you pointed out.
He might have found out on the show in the beginning itself. So that was very odd. And it just, it continues to make you wonder what the nature of, if this is an injury, what the nature of it could be, whatever it is that may be affecting her. How could it be pushed that late? Again, we have no idea. We don't know. And maybe in time we will find out. But I'm sure this interrupts a lot that, Toni had planned for All In. And beyond, what do you think are some candidates to push to potentially get to a level of a Toni Storm? Because this does leave another opening.
It is interesting. As you mentioned, Monet is the obvious candidate to sort of take that top spot, if you like. She's currently on the world tour of dropping all of these belts and has, I think, gained an awful lot of goodwill in doing so, because many people thought she would simply relinquish all of these titles. She's been all over the world, in France, and not just in sort of like major cities like Paris. She was in this little town, a couple of hours, west of Paris last weekend. And she's been in Italy. She's going to Poland, then up to Canada, as you mentioned. So by the end of this month, she should probably have gotten rid of the final 5 or 6 titles that she's had from all of these indie titles, and then that starts a fresh round of possibilities for her. So I think that, yeah, she's definitely someone who could step up. As for
let me just stop on that. It's how interesting how like she hasn't been on AEW TV, I mean, in months at this point, but going on this like tour where she's, you know, like fulfilling her what you might consider obligation of like dropping these championships. I think it's effectively turning her into a baby face, at least to a large portion of this audience, so that by the time she comes out, and if they frame the segment for her to come out to make the save or like to oppose a big heel, whatever the big heel is at the time, I've no doubt you can already run with her as a baby face.
I think she's ripe for a babyface run in the company, and I feel that the crowd would take to that if it's presented well. We've seen, I think a lot of AEW fans are plugged in to what's happening, so they see these clips of her, you know, in tears, you know, this, you know, handing over the title to other women that we may not really have heard of before, you know, as these titles trying to elevate the whole scene. So I think she's built up a lot of goodwill, and this does, as you say, set her up for something of a babyface run. I would also mention Willow, and I'm saying that because of the Shafir thing here. She's been pitted against Death Riders and Marina, you know, a few times now. And if Marina is going to be a proxy for Ronda Rousey, and again, we don't know that Ronda Rousey is going to appear at All In, but we do know she's going to be taking the training camp very seriously up until this fight with Gina Carano in May. So if Marina is to be, you know, kind of a proxy for setting something up, Willow could be in there as well. And she's certainly very beloved by the fan base, you know, and is a very straight up baby face. So yeah, I think perhaps there's a chance for elevation there as well.
Yeah, some names that you know, maybe people haven't thought about too much include Hikaru Shida, who, I mean, again, not to say she would be able to, you know, fulfill any like a similar role to a Toni Storm, but nonetheless, she represents like a level of star power and somebody who I think still has so much untapped potential about her in professional wrestling. I feel like the hint with the kendo stick might be a reference to her in this Toni Storm attack photo. So it could be, you know, just maybe a way to draw some attention to her. Looking up and down the roster, I mean, you know, Athena is still somebody who I don't exactly know what her deal is, but she is somebody who I think the show could really use, you know, from an in-ring perspective, even from a character perspective. You know, there are certainly people that are like being developed, or people that are, you know, in the tag division that I would still say are being developed. Any other names that might stand out to you that you think, you know, might be ready for a bigger push?
As you flip through that roster page, there aren't too many that really leap out of the page at me, other than the ones we've discussed, and that's Willow and.
You know, for people that could talk, I think Thunder Rosa, you know, like she recently came back, had a bit of a thing, you know, a title challenge. I don't know if they had more, you know, sort of like targeted for her or not, but she might also represent somebody who could, you know, again, fulfill some of that star power. What about Britt Baker?
Yeah, I was going to mention, we don't really know what's happening with Britt Baker. There's been speculation again out there that perhaps she may have signaled an intent to leave and is therefore just being, you know, benched for the rest of her contract. That has not been the narrative that she's told herself in a couple of interviews that I've read. So her absence continues to puzzle. I think we simply don't know what the situation is with Britt Baker.
But if I'm Tony, like, you know, Toni Storm is a big loss. If I'm Tony Khan, I'm trying to, you know, make as many calls as I can to try to like make the announcement that, hey, like we lost our biggest star, but you don't have to worry. We have a lot of great talent that might be there. So, yeah, we'll see how they handle this. What did you make of the Mina Shirakawa win over Marina Shafir?
I felt like that was absolutely plugged in to what Tony was meant to do, and it all goes back to what you were saying earlier about this being a very late, it looked like, decision or piece of news for them to deal with. Even the Easter egg room is really kind of on the nose. It's like, you know, she's lying there in a pool of blood with these, they're not even really trying to hide. It's just all these objects that are very, very clearly identified with other female roster members lying around. So I feel this was come up with on the day of.
Interesting. All right. Yep. More on this, I'm sure. Maybe as early as, I wonder if we'll find out anything on Collision, if they'll drop it, any more hints on either on commentary or not. But yep, tomorrow. Well, actually Sunday we'll have Collision course this week because they're split up into 2 episodes after the NBA games. So do check that out Sunday evening with John Kleinchester and Kate from Montreal.
The Post Wrestling Cafe is your one-stop shop for all of the coverage that Post Wrestling has to offer. 2 big rewind-aways this month with WWF Insurrection from May of 2002. This UK-only pay-per-view featured the Raw brand going overseas and ending with the infamous plane ride from hell. Then we're going to take a look at AWA's Super Sunday from April of 1983. A new edition of Talk Can Be Yours, plus MCU Later, Book Club, and coverage of UFC 326, TNA Sacrifice, and of course, XL editions of Rewind to Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown with all the news of the day. Join now at postwrestlingcafe.com.